Where I grew up, colors was confidence. We wore bold reds, yellows, blues that carried meaning and pride. You could tell someone's energy just by the way they walked into a room. When I moved to America and began working, it was the opposite. I started second guessing everything I wore. I muted my wardrobe. I wore black and gray, safe colors, because I didn't want to draw too much attention to myself. I had already felt different, and so I thought shrinking my presence would help me fit in. Colors play a significant role in Caribbean culture, and it's deeply ingrained in the history and the culture. Colors are associated with different meanings and emotions. They tell a story. Blue is the color of the sea and the sky, and it represents faith and trust. Red ignites passion, courage, and trust. Green represents nature, and yellow gives energy. Orange symbolizes the sunshine and the tropics, and purple represents wealth and wisdom. Bright colors in clothing and building echo this natural beauty. They celebrate the environment and create harmony between people and places. Much of Caribbean culture come from African ancestors. They brought with them colorful dresses and textiles. In many African culture, bright colors represents life, energy, community, and spiritual connection. During the colonial era, when enslaved Africans were oppressed, them and their descendants, they wore bold colors as a way to express their dignity, their resistance, individuality, and cultural pride. In Caribbean communities, the bright painted home that you see when you travel, they represent individuality, but also cultural identity. If you happen to visit a place like Barbados, Trinidad, or St. Lucia, you'll see bright homes painted in turquoise, pink, purple, green, lined up on a street. To grow up in the Caribbean wherein bold colors and bright colors is to carry with you a culture of joy, of resilience, of connection to the earth, to your ancestors, and ultimately to yourself. Looking back now, I can see that I was trying to hide in plain sight. Many of us internalize the idea that somehow colors is too much or not enough. But confidence is not about becoming somebody else. It's about returning or coming home to yourself. Today, I want to talk about 3 ways your culture might be shaping your confidence and what you can do to rewrite your story. Number 1, in many cultures, obedience is valued over voice. You may have grown up hearing things like don't talk back or don't make trouble. Those type of lessons, oftentimes they will leave you doubting your self-worth and holding back when you should be stepping forward. I grew up in a small religious community, and growing up there were spoken rules and unspoken ones about how I should behave, especially as a girl. We dressed modestly, we recited from memory, and we learned to sit still for hours during worship service. Even at home, our movement had to be respectful and quiet. In that world, children were to be seen but not heard. Questions weren't welcome, and feelings were not asked about. So I learned how to disappear in a room while still being present. I learned to mimic certainty. I learned to pretend I was sure about everything, even when I wasn't. On the inside, though, questions stirred. I remember asking to myself, pourquoi est-ce comme ça? Why is this so? Why can't faith also mean freedom? Why does being good feel so much like being invisible? But I would never ask those questions out loud because where I came from, cultural expectation taught you to dim your light, to shrink yourself, as to not disrupt the images that others want to see. I hear people say all the time, you have to be humble, you have to be humble, you have to be humble. Let's look up that word to see what it means. The word humble has the connotation of don't shine too bright, stay in your place, don't think too highly of yourself. And so I wonder about you. Where in your life have you learned to mimic certainty? Where have you shrunk your truth, yourself, dim your light, just to fit the expectations of others? If something came up for you just now, a feeling, a memory, just know that you're not alone. So many of us were taught that shining too brightly would make others uncomfortable. That questioning meant we were ungrateful. That speaking our truth was dangerous. So we learned to shrink, to perform, to silence ourselves, to belong. But here's the truth. The world needs your full light, your story, your voice, even the parts of you you were told to hide. What if just for today you gave yourself permission to stop mimicking and start standing in your truth? What if just for today you allow yourself to take up the space that you were always meant to take? You don't have to get it perfect. You don't even have to get it all at once. But you deserve to belong as your full self, not the version that others wanted you to be. That's the beginning of coming home to yourself. Number 2, language is deeply tied to confidence. If you speak with an accent or feel like your grammar feels imperfect, you may feel like your words don't belong, even if your idea is brilliant. But your voice, just as it is, belongs. At home, we spoke Dominican Creole or Patois and some English, but in school, we spoke only French. Creole or Patois language was seen as vulgar. English was foreign, and French was looked at as something beautiful. So I learned to shift my language to fit the room. I learned to silence the parts of me that didn't sound right. But it always left me wondering, if you have to switch your words to belong, do you really belong? And then I moved to America and it happened all over again. My English wasn't American enough. My accent marked me as different. My words came out carefully chosen, heavy with self-consciousness, and afraid of being judged. So once again, I felt like my voice wasn't quite welcome, as if I needed to erase parts of myself just to speak. Language became both my bridge and my barrier, a way to reach people and also a way to hide how foreign I felt inside. It taught me that language is about more than word. It's about being heard. It's about feeling worthy of speaking. It's about finding the courage to speak in your own voice, even when it trembles. So I ask you, where in your life have you felt like you needed to change your words, your voice, or even your silence just to belong? And what would it feel like to speak as yourself in your own language and trust that you still belong? And if that brought up something for you, maybe a memory or a feeling, know this. You deserve to take up space in every room, in your own voice, in your own words. You don't need to erase your accent, your language, or your story to belong. The right spaces will honor all of you exactly where you are. So today I invite you to try this. Speak one sentence to yourself, to someone else, to the world, in your full voice without editing. Let it sound like you, let it belong to you. And trust that you already belong too, because you do just as you are. Number 3, for many of us, standing out feels dangerous. You worry about what your family, your peers, your community will say about you if you speak up, if you lead, or if you shine. So you shrink, not because you don't believe in yourself, but you're afraid of betraying where you came from. Even after I left the place where I grew up, even after I left America and started living differently, I still heard the voices of my community in my head. My family, my religious group, my people. Not strangers, but the very people who taught me how to walk, to pray, to believe. The ones who told me who I was supposed to be. And that was the hardest part. Being myself meant risking their approval, maybe even their love. Because when you grow outside of what your community expects of you, there's a special kind of grief. A fear that if you shine too bright, they will turn away. That they'll see you as arrogant, ungrateful, or lost. So for years, even after I left, I kept performing the version of myself they could accept. When I visited home, I made sure to not talk too much or talk about my dream or how I had changed or how free I felt in my own skin. I stayed small around them, not because the rules still bound me, but because I didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable. I didn't want to see disappointment in their eyes. And so I betrayed myself a little every time just to keep their love. And so one day I thought about this. If the only version of me they can love is the one I hide, is this really love or is it just comfort? Where in your life are you still playing small, not because you have to, but because you're afraid of making the people that you love uncomfortable? Whose love are you afraid you'll lose fully if you step into who you are? And is that really love or is it familiarity? You can love your people and still choose yourself. You can honor your roots and still grow beyond them. You don't owe anyone a smaller life just because that's the one that they're comfortable with. Your light may feel like a threat at first, but in time it may become their permission slip also. You belong. Even if they don't understand yet, you still belong to yourself. In closing, here's what I want you to reflect on today. What cultural stories about confidence have you internalized? And what would it look like to give yourself permission to define confidence on your own terms? So take a moment or pause the video and write it down. So in summary, cultural expectations can teach you to shrink, but you can choose differently. Language may make you feel like an outsider, but your words still belong. Fear of judgment can silence you, but your light was never meant to stay hidden. Confidence doesn't mean rejecting your culture. It means reclaiming your right to speak and lead as yourself. Coming home to yourself means unlearning the rules that taught you how to shrink, finding your own voice even when it trembles, and choosing your own light even when it makes others uncomfortable. Because you were never meant to disappear into someone else's expectation. You were meant to belong to yourself first. If this message resonated with you, subscribe and stay connected. Feel free to comment below what's one story you meant to rewrite about your confidence. Your voice matters, your presence matters, and you have the permission to take up space. Sur ce, on se dit à la prochaine. On that note, I'll see you soon.